The other type of information that is important to know or understand what it looks like on a radiograph is the normal tooth anatomy, so structures that can be viewed on the dental radiograph. There's several different structures, and those are going to be your enamel, your dentin, the dentino-enamel junction, the pulp cavity, your PDL or periodontal ligament, the alveolar crest, and the lamina dura. So the enamel, we know, is the hardest tissue in the human body. It is also the densest and is going to be the outermost radiopaque layer on the crown of the tooth. So everything above that pink line is enamel. And then we have the dentin. The dentin is found beneath the layer of enamel, and it is going to surround the pulp cavity. Dentin will appear radiopaque as well, and it makes up the majority of the tooth structure. And though it and enamel are both radiopaque, there's a pretty clear difference. Enamel is very radiopaque, while dentin is less radiopaque. And the density, the radiopaqueness of dentin is going to compare to that of bone. And so you can see underneath that bluish line, that's your dentin. So everything above is enamel, and then everything that is down here, that's radiopaque, that is all going to be your dentin. Then we have the dentino-enamel junction. This is where your dentin and your enamel come together. It's going to be a thin line where the enamel, which is very radiopaque, and the dentin, which is less radiopaque, come together. So this line, right where I'm drawing this pink highlighter, you can see the difference here between your enamel and your dentin. So again, this very thin line is your dentino-enamel junction. Moving on to the pulp, we have the pulp cavity. This consists of your pulp chamber and the canals. And this is what contains your blood vessels and your nerves. And it's going to appear relatively radiolucent. The size and shape of the pulp is going to vary from tooth to tooth and person to person. It all depends on age. And so inside that red square, that radiolucent area, that is going to be the pulp chamber. And then extending down from there, almost looks like these little legs, that is your pulp canal. Mentum does not normally appear on a dental radiograph, so that's not really something we need to worry about identifying. Then we have what's called the lamina dura, and this is the wall of the tooth socket that surrounds the root of the tooth. It is made up of dense cortical bone, and on the radiograph is going to be a dense radiopaque line that surrounds the tooth. So you can see here on this one where these white arrows are pointing, that thin line is your lamina dura. And over on this radiograph, you can see this tooth has been extracted, and it's an even better example, in my opinion, of the lamina dura. You can see the outline of the tooth remaining there. So all of that radiopaque area that I've surrounded with red, that is your lamina dura. And then we have the alveolar crest. The alveolar crest is the highest point of alveolar bone found between teeth. It is also dense cortical bone, and it is going to be radiopaque as well. It is going to be almost like a continuation of the lamina dura. If you think of it kind of like a wave, it goes down, or like a hill. You go down the hill on one side, back up the hill on the other side, and you've got that crest, that alveolar crest, and then back down the other side, which would be equivalent to the lamina dura. So, where all these little arrows are pointing, that is your alveolar crest on the radiograph. And it is considered normal if it's 1.5 millimeters to 2 millimeters from the CEJ. So this picture here, this is going to be considered normal because it is in that range. Over here, we have where the alveolar crest should be. You can see there's a good alveolar crest right here. And then over here, we can see it's lower. It's not within that 1.5 to 2 millimeter range. Okay, I'm going to back this slide up and start over because I realized I said that this is the alveolar crest when it should be the CEJ that I was referring to. So backing everything up here. Next, we have the alveolar crest. And this is going to be the highest point of the alveolar bone found in between the teeth. So right here where these arrows are pointing, and I'm drawing the red, that is your alveolar crest. It is made of dense cortical bone. It's going to appear radiopaque as well because it's almost like it's a continuation of the lamina dura. So if you think of it kind of like a hill, you go up one side of the hill or up one side of the lamina dura, up over the alveolar crest, and back down that other side of the lamina dura. And it's considered normal if it's 1.5 millimeters to 2 millimeters from the CEJ. So the CEJ being the cemento enamel junction, which would be right in this area for these teeth. So on this particular radiograph, these would be considered normal. Now, when we move over to this radiograph, our CEJ would be right about in this area. But you can see our alveolar crest is all the way down here. So this would be considered not normal. The periodontal ligament space, or the PDL, is the space between the root of the tooth and the lamina dura. It's going to contain the connective tissues of fiber. It's going to contain connective tissues fiber and blood vessels. And on a radiograph, it's going to be a thin radiolucent line around the root of the tooth. On a healthy tooth, it's going to be one continuous line of uniform thickness. So in this area here, that's going to be your periodontal ligament space. You can see it right here as well. That is your PDL. And with the primary dentition, there are just a few things that are going to be different. They are going to have a larger pulp chamber, and there's more space in between the teeth. You can see this pulp chamber slightly larger than what a pulp chamber is in a slightly larger than what a pulp chamber is in a permanent tooth, and then the space, the distance in between these teeth here. On this radiograph, you can see that 8 and 9 are about to erupt. And there's also a supernumerary tooth in this area. Going to take it back and then fix that because that is off the screen. This is the review. So let's jump into a little bit of a review now. What is this an image of? If you were looking at this radiograph, what would you guess the anatomy is we're trying to depict here? And we are referring to this radiolucent area. And that is going to be the incisive foramen. Next, the radiolucent areas that the arrow is pointing to. So this cavity right here and right here. The nasal cavity. Got to go fix that one. For this one, what is this dark dot? The dark dot near the red dot. That is the lingual foramen. So I'll cover it up again here. This dark dot so what we're looking at here is this dark dot right where I put that red dot. That is the lingual foramen. The next one we are looking at is this projection that comes down here like this. And that is your maxillary tuberosity. Here, where the arrows are pointing, I'm going to trace over it this thin radiolucent line. Median palatine suture. Next, where this arrow is pointing, I'm going to circle the area that you're identifying. And that is going to be your mental foramen. Again, where the arrows are pointing, I'm going to trace over it. This white bony partition. The nasal septum. Next, the radiopaque ring. The radiopaque ring. That is your genial tubercle. And this hook-like projection. It's right here, the hook-like projection. Your hamular, or the hamulus, the hamular process, the hamulus process. And that's it.